All right, can everyone hear me okay? Sweet. So I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. For all of you who are joining us, welcome to our Student Organization Information session. This is being put on by ASUW and the Office of Student Orgs and Entertainment, and we are so excited to have you here if you're joining us. So I'm gonna get started, and we're gonna have a whole bunch of people tonight, so I'm gonna let everyone introduce themselves when they get ready to speak. But I'm going to go ahead and get things kicked off with a UW Connect tutorial. So my name is CJ. I am the Director of Finance and Student Organizations, and I'm sorry you can't see my face. I'm having some bandwidth issues, so I'm going to keep my camera off, but hopefully it'll still be worthwhile for you to learn a little bit about UW Connect. So before you get started with UW Connect, there's some big things you need to start planning. And I would say that you probably need to start planning an event about 6 weeks out, because there's a lot of work that goes into filling out all of the forms and everything that you're going to need. So you're going to have to kind of plan out the who, when, where, what, why. So for the where, you're going to need to reach out to central scheduling to make sure that the space that you want to use is available. If you're planning on having any food at your event, you'll have to reach out to UW Catering or other approved catering services. If you're planning on having any music or lighting, or you need a microphone, any of those kinds of services, you'll reach out to Aztec. If you're going to have tickets for the events, you'll have to reach out to the Union Ticket Office. If you're going to need graphics, you'll reach out to the ASUW Director of Marketing, and I'm sure that they will have some things to tell you about that later. And if you're having a speaker or a performer, you'll need to reach out to the ASUW or Student Orgs and Entertainment Office as soon as possible, because there's a lot of contracts that will need you to get filled out. But for every single event before you go to UW Connect, you're going to have to get started by reaching out to risk management and disability services. And that's just to make sure that everything is good to go before you get to filling out those questions on UW Connect. So to get started, I'm going to kind of run through some of the first steps, and then I'll have some screenshots that maybe help make this a little bit more clear. So you're going to go to the UW Connect website, which is on the top there, the uio.campuslabs.com/engage. And you're going to sign in using your UW account. Then you'll select the organization you would like to submit an event for if you're a member of multiple student organizations. You'll click Manage Organization, and you'll choose the hamburger menu, and you'll select a new event. So that's a really fast overview, but I'm going to have some screenshots here, so hopefully it'll help make things more clear. So this is what UW Connect looks like when you first sign on. And you'll see that I am a member of Economics Club and Political Science Club. And here's a little C for CJ up here to show that I've signed in. So you'll click on Manage Organization, and you'll select this little hamburger menu right here, and that's how you're going to get started. When you select the hamburger menu, this Events tab will pop up with all of these, and you'll want to select Events. And then on the top right, you'll click Create an Event. And from here, you're going to have the forms to start filling out. So the first form you're going to fill out is just like the basic information form. You'll give your title, the date, the time, and the place, and all of those things. Hopefully, you'll write a little bit better description for your event than me. Sorry, just got some things in the chat. Okay, and then some settings will pop up. It'll ask you if you want to have students RSVP ahead of time. And so it's up to you and your student organization if you want to have students RSVP. And then you can also choose to have post-event feedback. So you can ask for different questions and things to pop up after you hold your event. And so you can get student feedback from UW Connect. So you're gonna also need to upload a cover photo. And UW Connect gives you some great information about the pixel sizes and all these different things. But I know that that can be overwhelming, and so that's what ASUW is here to help you all with. And I know that there's some other great entities within CESOL that would love to help you with all of these steps in UW Connect. So if you need help with any of this information, feel free to reach out to the Director of Marketing in ASUW, because I know that some of this stuff can get a little complex. So you'll select what kind of organization you are, and then you'll select what kind of activity you're going to be holding. These are pretty straightforward. And then this is kind of the meaty part of UW Connect. And so this is where I was saying you have to do some planning before you fill out this form. So you have to fill out this form 5 weeks ahead of your event, but really you need to start planning at least 6 weeks ahead of time, because when you get to this point on the form, you're gonna have to make sure that you've already done some planning so that you can fill out this form correctly. So you'll see here that we've got just some basic information about who the primary person for the event is and where you will be holding it. There's that question. Will you use Aztec? Are you serving food? So you can see that all of that planning that you do ahead of time is really gonna come in handy here. And then if you're charging an admission fee, and if you're doing tickets, and there's some great information about how to contact the union ticket desk here. And you'll need to fill out some forms about if you'll be live streaming or photographing or filming. And will your event involve minors? Will it require out-of-state travel? And do you have any co-sponsors? And then, are you seeking funding from ASUW for this event? So I won't really talk much about that one, because I know we've got some senators who would love to tell you more about that, but that's something that ASUW would love to help you with as well. So you'll answer who your intended audience is, your estimated attendance, and if you want the union marketing office to post your event on the digital signs. And again, here's some great resources to reach out to if you're confused about how you've got all these different pixels going on, you've got all these different requirements for marketing. Feel free to reach out and ask for help with any of that stuff, because we're happy to do it. And then you're gonna get to the funding board application. So you'll see some general questions about your student org. And then if you're paying for a performer, because like I said, you have to fill out some contracts ahead of time. So really try to reach out to the ASUW office and the Student Orgs and Entertainment office ahead of time if you're gonna be having a performer. You'll give us a little bit of an educational value. You'll talk about how it's going to be advertised, and if you need graphic design help. So here's even another group, another entity within CESOL and within the union who would love to help you with advertising. So don't feel overwhelmed in that area. And then here's some information about digital signage that you'll fill out. And yeah, that's basically all that you need to do to plan an event in UW Connect. And I tried to go through it really fast, but if you need any assistance with any of that, or you've never filled it out before and it's your first time and you're feeling overwhelmed, any of that kind of stuff, that's what I'm here to help you with. You can feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm ASUW EXC7 at uyo.edu, and I would love to schedule a Zoom meeting with you and go through those forms with you if you ever need help with any of that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to give you a brief tutorial on using UW Connect and how to plan events. And so I'm going to pass it on to Senator Grieg in ASUW, and he serves on the ASUW Funding Board, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Just wanted to talk about this real quick, and just basically I'm going to go over the generalities of funding, and then my colleague Senator St. Marie is going to go over a little bit more of the specifics. So if you could, thank you. So we're just going to go over what is Funding Board, what can you expect when submitting something to Funding Board, and just kind of what a presentation to Funding Board would look like. So Funding Board is a ASUW internal committee. We mostly only work with allocating funds that have been set aside for student organization conferences, competitions, and events. So competitions have brand new, I think last year. So now you can get money for your SO to go to a conference, you can go to competition, or a lot of people take advantage of our events budget, which has been widely used over the last couple of years. So it's mostly comprised of senators, first-year senators, and ASUW execs, and we meet Mondays at 2:30, which is important. Next slide, please. So once you're funded and, once you're approved by UW Connect, then Director Berg will actually get you in a scheduled time slot to go to Funding Board. And there you will have to send a representative from your student organization to present to the Funding Board. And then once we approve your funding, you work with the ASUW office to actually get that funding like paid for and actually gets credit cards to pay for things or reimbursements or whatever you would need. So you will send a representative to present what the request is and why it's beneficial for students, because ultimately we do want it to be beneficial to students, but that often ranges differently with whatever you're working on with your SO. That can be entirely different, but we do want it to have some beneficial use for students. We may ask you questions to clarify the request or to fill in gaps of the request that might not have been fully there. And then we ask you to step out of the room real fast, and we just debate real fast to see if it does in fact match our ASUW funding policy, which the funding policy I'll bring up in a second, but we're just basically making sure that it is within those guidelines. And then we'll bring you back in to notify you of our decision. If it's over $3,500 and part of an event, then you also will have to go to full Senate meeting on Tuesdays at 7 to then get it fully approved, but we'll let you know that in the meeting. So on the bottom of the ASUW resource page that you can find under the UYO website, if you scroll down to the bottom, you will see this banner, and if you click on Students Organizational Services, it takes you to a page where it will give you all the information you need, like frequently asked questions, applications, processes. They really did a good job with this website and really has the specifics on everything you would need. And that's kind of more just the same. And with that, I'll pass it off to Senator St. Marie.
Thank you. So I'm Senator St. Marie. I'm from the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. This is my second year on ASUW, and I'm my second year on Funding Board. So thank you. So event funding. Event funding can be really complicated. So student organizations are eligible to receive up to $10,000 per year from ASUW for events. If you are requesting more than $3,500, you will have to have non-ASUW funds to match at least 10% of the amount more than $3,500. I'm talking about this because this is one of the most confusing things in all of ASUW, if I'm being honest. So right below that, I have a bit of an example. So if a student organization is requesting $8,000, they will receive $3,500 unmatched from Funding Board, assuming they're approved. And then of your non-ASUW funds that you have to get matched, you will need $450, which is just the difference between your total amount and your unmatched amount times that 10%. I apologize if this isn't super clear, but please let me know if you have a question about this. You can always reach out to me. If you're requesting $3,500 or less for an event, you will not need to get any outside funding. You can be completely funded by ASUW. There'll be no issues with that. For both types of events, if it's over 3,500 or below 3,500, you will have to have that application in 5 weeks before the event. From everything we've understood, 5 weeks is even still pushing it for how close you can get to your event and still have everything kind of go off without a hitch. So I would strongly suggest that you submit those earlier than 5 weeks before. You do apply through UW Connect. I'm not super clear on all of that. I think Director Berg covered it very well. The next thing I'm going to talk about is conference funding. So conference funding is if a student organization would like to send members to some sort of a conference. So for example, if there's an engineering conference and the Society of Mechanical Engineers would like to send some members to that and there's a registration fee, we can pay up to $750 of that registration fee for members. This application only needs to be submitted 30 days before the conference. Again, I would strongly suggest you submit them before that. All student organizations are eligible for this funding, but it is worth mentioning that student org members who are receiving the funding to pay for their registration must be students who pay the ASUW fee. Typically, that's not really an issue. Most students who are on campus have paid the fee. This year, it's a little more complicated, so we're kind of working through how that's all going to work. What about travel expenses and other things? These funds cannot be used for anything other than the conference registration. That is really because it's a whole different set of issues if we're funding other things. There's a lot of other ways to get funding for those. And you can apply through the ASUW website. It's just a form you fill out, and you don't have to go through UW Connect, to my knowledge. And you can work it all through just kind of forms and with Director Berg and the funding board. The next thing I'm going to talk about is competition funding. So for competition funding, each student organization is eligible for up to $2,000 per semester in funding for their competition registration fees. This application needs to be submitted 60 days before the competition. For those of you who kind of who might not understand what the competition is, it's an academic competition. So, for example, if you're going to something as the American Society for Civil Engineers, every year they go and they do a dam building competition where they build a scale dam and have to pay for all these fees. And a lot of the time, those fees are upwards of $2,000. So that's kind of what this is here for. Again, all student organizations are able to go if they're attending an academic competition. And again, student org members must be students who pay the ASUW fee to receive this funding. Again, these funds can only be used for the registration. However, with this, if the competition registration fee is not $2,000, you could request the full $2,000 and use some of that to buy physical materials. So for the American Society of Civil Engineers, they could use that extra $150, $200 to help build their actual dam. And again, these forms can be found on the ASUW website. Same process as conference funding. So you can kind of go through that. It's just forms, not through UW Connect. But yeah, the last thing I'm going to talk about is some more information. If anyone here is looking to go through and actually have get funding, I would strongly suggest you look through the ASUW finance policy, Article 3 of it. What I've presented to you all is mostly information from the finance policy. And there is a lot, especially for events. I cannot stress this enough, that for the events, there is some very interesting rules and regulations that we have to follow. So if you are putting on an event, I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that someone in your student organization reads through those sections of the ACW finance policy. It will make everything way smoother if you kind of understand some of the reasons why we have to do some of these things. And if you have any other questions about this, or especially about the finance policy, you're free to email me. My email's right there. Director of Finance and Student Organization Relations Berg is an amazing resource. More information on the committee can be found on the ACW website if you go through the legislation, or if you even just Google UWYO Student Organization Funding Board, it'll pop right up. So with that, if anybody has any questions, drop them in the chat or send me an email. Thank you, Director Berg.
Thank you, Senators. Hi, I'm the Director of Marketing Pradosh, and I'm going to talk about the ways that student orgs can utilize the different kinds of marketing resources that are available to them. Next slide, please. So there are two ways that student organizations can access marketing. And one is through us at ASUW, and the other one is through the Center of Student Involvement and Leadership, or CECL. And so first of all, I'm going to be covering how you can request marketing through me and through ASUW. As you can see, you can navigate through our website to Student Org Services and Marketing Assistance. And the Marketing Assistance kind of describes very briefly just the different kinds of resources that are available, things that I can help you with, like creating a logo for your student org or posters, any kind of signage, or even just to think of different ways to get the word out about your student organization and what would be the most relevant for you. And I strongly suggest that you also submit a marketing request form. The link to this is also housed in the Marketing Assistance side. Basically, it's just to give me an overview on what kind of projects you're thinking of doing, and you can already submit files to me and information on what platforms you want to market on, things like that. And you can also set up a meeting with me where we can discuss this in more detail. So something important to keep in mind, go back, thanks. So something to keep in mind is the eligibility. As a student organization, you're going to be eligible for marketing, but you also have to make sure to include the ACW logo on any marketing materials that you create. That was just the last thing that I wanted to point out. And then marketing through CECL, as you can see, this is then housed under their part of the university website. It's a similar process. You look for the student org resources and then the marketing page, and that should say weeks. So you can request marketing assistance from them 6 weeks in advance under this email, whereas for me, you can request it under ASUWEXC4@uyo.edu. And CECL also has a lot of really great resources. They look a little bit different this semester because of the phased approach and COVID. But they're responsible for all of the resources I've listed below, such as the poster run and poster room. And so the poster run is basically that they print out posters for you and put them up in various locations around campus. And the poster room is somewhere that people from the student organization can go, and actually they have different kind of resources for you to create posters. Union advertisements are becoming more and more relevant as the school begins to open up again. And this is like digital signage on the video board, where you can also send in materials to have them posted. And then clubs and organizational fairs, they happened online or virtually this semester. And the UYO events posting, that's what Director Berg explained earlier. Thank you.
All right, excuse me. Hi everyone, my name is Eric Kale. I serve as one of our associate directors here for CECL. The areas specifically that I oversee are the Student Organizations and Entertainment Office, in addition to a couple of our other offices here in the lower level of the union. You can go on to the next slide. So just a real quick update. We've been undergoing quite a few changes in the last 6 to 9 months, pretty much since the bulk of students have been here on campus. So I want to kind of mention a few of those, and then we're going to walk into some other updates with how student organizations are going to be structured. So first, for the updates within the office, you might have been used to our office being called the Campus Activity Center, or the CAC. We're in the same location, but the name has changed. And so because we're part of the Center for Student Involvement and Leadership, we wanted to better tell our story and better indicate what happens within the office space. And so that's why, appropriately so, the name has changed to Student Organizations and Entertainment. So student organizations, fraternity, sorority life, and 7220 entertainment are the 3 areas housed now within Student Orgs and Entertainment. And we'll sometimes call it Student Orgs and Entertainment for short. With some of the new student organization policy changes that have occurred recently, we have removed the acronym RSO. That unless you're on campus and are familiar with that language, you have, and if you're new to campus or if you're visiting campus, you have no idea what RSO is or means. There's also a lot of confusion that was created the last few years with, does it stand for a registered student organization or is it a recognized student organization? And from a legal standpoint, those are 2 different things. And so we, in our overhaul and revamp of how we recognize our student organizations, we removed that designation. So now we're calling our student organizations or student orgs for short. Not RSO, not SO, student orgs. So that way anybody that comes on campus can understand what's happening in the office space and then understands typically what a student organization is about. To go along with some of those changes, we have an email address now that is studentorgs@uwyo.edu. So any questions, concerns, issues, any ways that we can provide assistance for you, send us an email to studentorgs@uwyo.edu. It should be pretty easy to remember too. Kind of goes along with the name change, both for how we recognize our organizations and then also the office name change. With that, we are undergoing some staffing changes. So the image actually up on display is a posting that is going out for a full-time professional student organization coordinator, student organization advisor. So this is, some of you, I'm recognizing a lot of names in our session today. And so Jackie Rickett, you might have worked with her in the past with student organizations. She's since moved on to some other exciting things for her own personal career. And we're going to be replacing her sometime in the next couple months here. So we're undergoing the search process right now for a full-time student organization coordinator. So in the meantime, you're going to be working and hearing most probably from me. So I'll be managing the student organization email address and then also serving some additional office hours in the student organizations and entertainment office area. And then last that I wanted to mention is with this kind of overhaul that we're talking through tonight and having a vacancy from the summer and all of the COVID changes that are happening, we're a little slower with the rollout than I think would have been preferred, but we're looking at the beginning of October to release the new website that has new resources built onto it, a whole new setup for equipment rental and checkout that's all online based, so you don't have to come to the office and fill out forms anymore. As well as a new system and process for creating student organizations, which will be posted up on there. As I mentioned, student organizations, in July, a new policy was approved by the Board of Trustees that clarified the role and the relationship between student organizations and the university. And in doing with that policy change, there was a secondary policy change of how we recognize our organizations overall. So yes, on an annual basis, all student organizations have to register with our office, so we at least know that they exist and they're going to be functioning for the year. Then, based on if it's a new organization, that registration there's a step and some procedures to indicate what level they'll fall into. If they're existing organizations, just re-registering, kind of their annual renewal process, if you will, groups will be classified into one of three levels. The first level is really for some of our usually smaller student organizations that are more interest-based, that they kind of do their own thing and they're completely autonomous. They operate under the direction and control of their own members. Even advisors in some of these instances may be a little bit more detached. And there's some benefits for each of these levels. So for example, level 1 organizations will no longer be required to have an advisor. So a different system or process than what you might have been used to. The level 1 organizations also typically do not have many risks associated with their meetings, activities, and events. It's more of the groups that are just kind of smaller gatherings of folks interested in certain topics. Level 2 organizations are those that have a purpose that's aligned with the university in terms of the purpose and the culture, but then also is focused on their own members. The best example that I can offer right now for that category is going to be a lot of the honor societies will likely be classified in a level 2 status. And I say that because you have advisors that are interested in the topic, but it's not necessarily their full-time job to advise those organizations. But those organizations are about academic excellence, and they're connected to some sort of major or department on campus. And so there is a tangential connection there, and it's for the recognition piece of those members. That's a definition for level 2. And then our level 3 organizations are those organizations that are intimately intertwined to the mission and the traditions of the campus and the culture and the purpose. And usually some of those, or not usually, oftentimes those organizations are key contributors for campus-wide events and programs and tradition. That's hence that traditions word. A great example of that, well, the other piece of level 3 is that the campus dedicates physical space for that organization to function, and or a designated staff member is that person's university title and position description. So an example of one of the staff members I work with here in Student Orgs and Entertainment would be our fraternity and sorority life advisor. It is in her job description to advise to organizations specifically. And so because the institution is making that institutional investment for that organization, from a liability standpoint, there's not really a way to detach the university from the club and org because we're paying an advisor to support them. And so those types of organizations will be considered a level 3. And understandably so, level 3 organizations have on-campus space and or paid staff advisors to support them. So you might be wondering, how is this classification determined? Well, recognizing some names again in this group, and about a month and a half ago, a survey was sent out to each student organization president or some of the officers and advisors and asked to fill out this survey. And that survey collected a wealth of information about funding streams and sources, on-campus space, roles of advisors, purpose of organizations, signature events, all those things we just talked about that help indicate what level they'll fall into. We're taking that data right now and we're doing an initial review, and based on that data, tentatively placing them in a level 1, 2, or 3 status. Then once that information is compiled for all 300 student organizations that we have, we're going to be taking that to a review committee that will go through that as a kind of a system of checks and balances. ASCW is going to have some representation there with that group to just make sure that we're all on the same page and we understand why groups are in the categories that they're in. Then we'll communicate that out to the student organization leadership team and the organization's advisor and answer any questions that they might have with that. So I envision when they get that, student organizations get that message, some justification will be provided as to why they're in that category. If for some reason that organization feels like they should be elevated or maybe drop down to a different level, then there's going to be a process to be able to have that re-reviewed. We will go through this process annually. So every summer, we'll take a look at what are the events that occurred in the last year, what are any potential changes that happened with student organizations and their functions, and adjust their level accordingly. And so then after that appeals process, whether that's granted or denied, that will be the final determination for the duration of this school year. So our timeline on that right now, survey results are pretty slow to come in. So if you haven't yet finished that, this process is hinging on that. But my hope here is we'll send out another reminder for that survey sometime next week, that by, again, the first week or so in October, that that initial review and classification can be wrapped up. All right, last item that I want to offer is, as you can see with the different levels, our office is going through a bunch of different changes and transitions. We're trying to provide a more robust experience for our student organizations, both the officers, advisors, and members. And we want to be able to hear from you and what could help us get there. One of the things that we want to be able to do more of is offer more optional trainings and workshops to enhance not only the leadership, but the different skills that different officers and positions may need to really be successful in those roles. So not everything is going to be just how to balance a budget, but we will offer a session like that. Others might be more about event planning or how to take your, how to manage conflict in your organization. So we're going to be looking for different topics of interest for that, and I anticipate working with ASCW to discern some of those topic areas, and then also bring other campus folks on into those workshops too, that are really the experienced professionals and experts in some of those areas across campus. So if there's themed workshops that you want to see, or just maybe an area that your organization is struggling and needs help with, send us an email at studentorgs@uwyo.edu and let us know. And we'll either work with you individually, or if we're noticing a theme, we'll put a larger session together. The annual registration that many of you are used to having to complete is currently on pause. Because this new level system that we're rolling out, we want to make sure that those two merge together and that you don't have to fill out the registration form twice. So those will tie in together. So more information will come out later about that. You have nothing to worry about at the moment. The one thing that would help to make sure that the right folks are getting the right communication is double checking officers in your UW Connect profile. You can do that. You have to have an current officer status to be able to change other officers. One pro tip, don't change yourself into the last thing, because the second that you change your officer status or remove your own officer status, you also lose the ability to update everybody else. So we've gotten quite a few questions about that recently. So pro tip, make sure that you're the last one to remove your officer status. The last thing I was going to offer is, in addition to some other resources that'll be on the website rollout October 1st, there's an operations manual that level 3 groups will have to create, but we're trying to do the heavy lifting for you, and so we'll provide a template for that. For folks that are thinking about starting a new organization, we're providing a framework and a template for that as well. So you'll get a template of a constitution that you really could just even plug your own organization into if you really wanted to. And so that is, as I mentioned earlier, is something else that's undergoing some changes. We're actually trying to simplify the process to be a new student organization here. So instead of 7 officers being required, now or 7 members being required, it's only going to be 4. Instead of 4 officers, now you only need 3 officers. Depending on your classification, you may or may not even need an advisor for that club and org. So we really want to embrace and support our student organization community, make it easier for groups to come together and do things in more formalized and structured ways, and benefit their members. So again, I'm Eric Kale over at Cecil. If there's other questions that come up, I'll throw my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out and let us know what's going on and how we can support you best.
Thank you, Eric. So I'm going to talk a little bit about gathering guidelines now that phase 3 is going to start at UW. So just a quick review of phase 3. It begins September 28th, which is this coming Monday, and it's ending November 20th. This means that all students are now going to be able to return to campus, and the buildings are going to be open to their fullest capacity with social distancing. This obviously does not mean original fullest capacity. It means fullest capacity now that we have to take into account all these different guidelines. And another difference is that now all students will be required to submit a COVID pass every day to monitor any unexpected symptoms. This is absolutely mandatory. And in-person student org activities will be able to resume on and off campus. However, you have to keep in mind that you have to be following these gathering guidelines through, and we still encourage you to plan virtual activities. So the student org gathering guidelines for phase 3 include the fact that all members and officers must practice mask wearing, social distancing, hygiene, and this includes covering your coughs and sneezes, washing your hands, and refraining from touching your face. And for all in-person or hybrid meetings and events, you are responsible for taking attendance. This is for contact tracing purposes, so that in case there is an outbreak, we can notify you and make sure that everyone is as safe and healthy as possible. Indoor gatherings are limited to a maximum of 40 people and 50 people, and outdoor gatherings are limited to a maximum of 150 people. This, of course, means that the space in which you're hosting the gathering has to be able to accommodate a minimum of 6-foot distance between attendees. And if there is not enough space to accommodate for the maximum number of attendees, then this cap has to be lowered. The event organizers are responsible for knowing the UW COVID policy, and if this changes, you're also responsible for keeping up to date with it to ensure that the attendees adhere to the policy and any other guidelines. And then after phase 3 will be phase 4, and that's going to begin November 23rd and end December 11th. And just a quick review of this, it means that all instruction will move back to online only, and campus building will shift once again to restricted access. Students will have to continue to use COVID Pass for daily health screening. And what this means for your student organization is that no in-person meetings will be permitted on or off campus, and that all student organization activities will have to return to a virtual format, including meetings, general or for officer meetings, all events, social hours, and basically any sort of student org activity or gathering. So what happens if your student organization doesn't comply with the gathering guidelines? This is the basic UW COVID policy for non-compliance with any COVID guidelines. In accordance with the expectations of the Student Code of Conduct, you have to adhere to this policy. And if you violate this, you will be referred to the following process, which is that disciplinary action for violation will include warning or probationary period, immediate suspension from participation in activities, athletics, clubs, groups, events, or leadership roles, and it may result in suspension or dismissal. If you scan the code here, you'll find more information and updates on COVID-19 related to the university. And don't forget to always wear your face mask and social distance.
And this last screen, you can get SOAR credit for attending this event if you scan this QR code. And I think at this point, we will open it up to any questions we might have.
I can see in the chat that someone asked who you can speak to create a new organization. As Eric also mentioned, you can email studentorgs@uio.edu with any questions you have. However, there is also a page housed on the CECL part of the UYO website, and it's specifically for forming student organizations. And there it outlines the complete process of how to start a student organization, including the handbook, deadlines, and how to do this, and the link I will put into the chat. Thank you.
Eric brought up a great point. To me, when Senator St. Marie was presenting about conferences and competitions, he did stick to our ASUW finance policy, which talks about travel, but at this time we are trying to focus on virtual events and virtual conferences and competitions. So just keep that in mind, but hopefully someday when things go back to normal, we will be able to have travel for conferences and competitions again. Are there any other questions?
Just something to note really quickly is that the student organization link that I sent is currently outdated. However, it is under review. So even though it does provide some guidelines, some basic guidelines for how to start a student organization, I would suggest using the email instead.
And I can provide a little clarification there. So if you're thinking about starting a new organization or wondering what it's going to take, I kind of talked through some of these points already, but you just need 4 students. 3 of those would be designated an officer. So you would need essentially the primary leader of the organization, a secondary leader, and then indicate who is going to be the student working with finances for the organization. And so you'll identify those 4 folks and then kind of a member at large, if you will. Doesn't mean that they couldn't be an officer, but we only require the 3 officers. You'll need a constitution, and we do have a template of that up on the website right now. That part will be staying the same. There is specific language that the Constitution must include. So just if you want to double check and make sure you look at the template that's provided and you include the required language. But once you have those 2 pieces, next week the new register your new student organization form will go live, and that form needs to be completed. It's really as simple as that. 4 members, Constitution, fill out that form.
I do have one question real quick about the event funding that was mentioned. I'm just wondering what kind of constitutes an event, because I guess the student, so like, I don't know, what are the parameters to get funding for an event, I guess, or what qualifies as an event?
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. So our ASUW finance policy kind of outlines that an event is a program or activity open to the entire student population that has valid educational or enrichment purposes.
Okay.
So it's pretty open. That can be interpreted in a lot of ways. So
Awesome, thank you.
all right. Are there any other last questions? Well, thank you guys all so much for coming to this event and for showing your support. I hope that you learned something about student orgs, and if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to the Student Orgs and Entertainment Office, reach out to ASUW. Again, my email is asuwexc7@uwyo.edu, And I am always here to answer any questions or to help with anything that any of you might need. Does anyone else have any final thoughts? All right. Thank you so much.